The one thing that you do every day, right when you wake up, is shrinking your brain. And in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what that habit is and how to stop it now. Because the longer you continue to do it, the smaller your brain will become, which leads to lower energy, lower mood, and lower motivation. So if you don't want that, then make sure to pay attention. But before we get into the main topic of this video, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm a cognitive neuroscientist, and on this channel, I make videos about the brain. So if you like learning cool stuff about the brain, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Alright, so many of you are doing something every morning that is not helping you at all, but rather it is damaging your brain. And what you're doing is called emotional discounting. Discounting means reducing or lowering value. So when you emotionally discount something, you basically reduce or ignore its importance. Okay, so imagine for a second that you have an important task ahead of you, like studying for an exam or working on a project. Now, if you don't feel like doing any of that, you might end up pushing it off until later, right? You're basically reducing the perceived value of that task and instead choosing to do something more fun instead. We call this emotional discounting because you're effectively discounting or ignoring the importance of the task at hand. So why is this bad? Well, first of all, because it reduces our productivity and prevents us from reaching our goals. But even worse than that, it actually damages our brain. In fact, emotional discounting is one of the things that causes our brain to shrink. Now you might be wondering, how does emotional discounting cause my brain to shrink? Well, to understand that, we need to first look at another process that is the opposite of emotional discounting, and that is emotion regulation. Emotion regulation is basically our ability to control and manage our emotions. So let's say that once again you have an important task ahead of you, but this time you decide to take a different approach. Instead of pushing it off, you find a way to motivate yourself and actually do the work. This ability to regulate your emotions and do the work anyway is what we call self-control. And self-control is really important for our brain health. In fact, areas in our brain that are related to self-control actually grow when we practice them. So whenever you choose to do something difficult over something easy, those areas in your brain grow. Those areas are called the prefrontal cortex and the nucleus accumbens. Okay? On the other hand, when you do something easy instead of difficult, those areas in your brain shrink. So if you constantly push off important tasks and reduce their perceived value, those areas in your brain will shrink. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I get it. When I emotionally discount things, my brain shrinks. But why is that such a big deal? Well, these areas in our brain are responsible for things like planning, decision-making, attention, and controlling our impulses. And so, as they shrink, we become less capable of doing those things. In other words, as you emotionally discount more and more, you lose your ability to plan, to make good decisions, to focus and control your impulses. And this can lead to all sorts of problems in life. For example, studies have shown that people who lack self-control tend to have lower grades, earn less money, and have more health problems. And what's even worse is that once these areas in our brain start shrinking, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. What I mean by that is that as you lose your ability to control your impulses, you become more likely to emotionally discount things and push off important tasks. And as you do that more and more, those areas in your brain continue to shrink, which makes it even harder to control your impulses, and so on. Now that you know how bad emotional discounting is, you might be wondering how you can stop doing it. And there are many ways to stop doing it. But here, I'll go over 3 of my favorite ones. The first step to overcome emotional discounting is to become aware of it. As I mentioned earlier, emotional discounting happens when we reduce the perceived importance of a task. And the problem is that often we do this without even realizing it. For example, let's say that you know you should be studying, but you're feeling lazy and unmotivated. Instead of recognizing that you're emotionally discounting the importance of studying, you might end up telling yourself things like, "Oh, it's no use anyway. I never study. It's too hard. It's too stupid to learn this. All of these thoughts are examples of emotional discounting, because they all serve to reduce the perceived value of studying. The first step to overcoming emotional discounting is therefore to become aware of it and to recognize when you're redoing it. And there are some telltale signs to look out for. For example, you might notice that you're making excuses or blaming external factors for your inaction. Or you might notice that you're feeling low energy, unmotivated, or bored. All of these are signs that you may be emotionally discounting the task at hand. Once you become aware of emotional discounting, the next step is to challenge those thoughts. As I mentioned earlier, emotional discounting often takes the form of negative thoughts and self-talk. For example, you might find yourself saying things like, "Oh, it's too hard. I'm not smart enough. It's pointless to try." These thoughts may seem like common sense at the time, but they're not helpful, and they only serve to make you feel worse and do nothing. So once you've become aware of those thoughts, the next step is to challenge them. Ask yourself whether they're really true or just excuses that you've been telling yourself. For example, is it really too hard? Have you tried your best? Is it really pointless? Will it really change anything if you do or don't do it? By challenging these thoughts, you'll be able to see them more clearly and realize that they're not as powerful as you think. Finally, the third step is to replace those thoughts with more helpful ones. Once you've challenged your negative thoughts and realized that they're not true, it's time to replace them with more helpful ones. For example, instead of saying, "Oh, it's too hard," say, "This is challenging, but I can do it." Instead of saying, "I'm not smart enough," say, "I can learn this." Instead of saying, "It's pointless to try," say, "It's worth giving it my best shot." By replacing your negative thoughts with positive and helpful ones, you'll be able to see the task at hand in a new light and be more likely to tackle it. If you liked this video, check out this one next, where I talk about 5 surprising ways that stress affects your brain. And remember, you can find all the resources used in this video in the description below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.